This is the World Innovators Podcast with your host, Donna Peterson.
Well, you're speaking and I'm kind of just grinning because as a marketer, I'm like, oh, it's like I'm hearing the choir sing to me because I totally agree. And I can't even tell you how many meetings I have been in where the clients are sitting there. We got the big whiteboard going and they're showing me all the numbers and they're saying, but Donna, from the emails, we blasted to this many people. This was our opens. These were our clicks, but this is all we got with sales.
Yeah.
And I'll always say to them, but don't forget about the branding.
Correct.
And they're like, well, branding doesn't matter. And I'm like, no, what do you mean branding doesn't matter?
Yeah.
Especially now. I feel we saw a huge leap when COVID hit. Marketing just jumped into the future. And I almost think B2B marketing really should be called like B2B relationship building, because you've got to be building relationships. So just like you said, if you're sitting down and you're looking at two pieces of equipment and you're looking at how they're produced or how much their turnover is, what they, how much, how fast they can run. I'm getting stumbled with my words.
Yeah.
But then you sit there and if you're talking to this company and you're like, oh, okay, but they're going to back it up and they're going to give me this much support. And this guy's been here with me all along the way. I feel confident in his product.
Correct.
You're going with the company that you have confidence in. You've built trust with them because they've sent you the information. They've nurtured you.
Right.
And now you've got this relationship with this individual that could take you the long haul. They'll be a customer of yours forever if you need another piece of equipment. That's where B2B companies have to go.
Right.
It can't be, now we're getting email messages from people saying, this is a follow-up. And then when you open it up, they never even really sent an email to you before. They're trying to tease people to open it up. And that's not good marketing tactics.
No.
You should really be trying, like you said before, think about giving them as many benefits or values to make their job easier. Like with your newsletter daily. That probably helps that company every morning, because whether they go to their boss and says, oh, well, did you read that article on so-and-so? Or they're speaking to a customer of theirs and said, well, that article there, maybe you should do this.
Right.
So it helps them do their job. So
it is a battle. Like I said, for marketers, probably the number one battle we have to fight is the return on investment argument.
Yeah.
And, it's just, it's perennial. And it's exacerbated, it's made worse because many of the people in upper management, especially in industrial settings, right? B2B industrial, but it may be true in some of your other audience, depending on what it is. Most of them are either have an engineering background or a finance background, right? And both of those are very analytical, numbers-oriented people. And they're great people, and you've got to have those people, but it makes an uphill battle for most marketing people because you have to come in and you have to argue things that are not provable by numbers.
Well, that's it. You don't have, like you said, there's all this automation now. There's all these reports, there's everything. And you can't really put a value or create a report on branding or how the person who's receiving the message, how their trust is building.
Right. That's right.
It's very hard to do, but it's definitely necessary. And as our marketplace gets more and more crowded, it's going to be those companies that really concentrate on that, I think, are the ones who are going to survive and succeed.
Right. Yeah.
Because if all you're trying to do is push sales, or if, like you said, those top corporate management only want to see the number of leads. Correct.
Yep. I do tend to agree, and we don't wish failure on any company, right? But I do tend to agree, those that tend to be much more numbers oriented in some ways, obviously you've got to be numbers oriented, obviously you've got to make a profit. But for those who are strictly, exclusively number oriented, they have a higher probability right? Their probability, if you want to use numbers, their probability of failure is higher than those who understand that marketing is a philosophical commitment to relationship building, not a what's my best return on this $1 that I spent? How can I get the most measurable return from it? Because it's relationship building, and you can't really put numbers on that. Human interaction is not something that you can typically measure, right? No. It's emotional, it's mental, it's whatnot. So it is a philosophical understanding, though, and if your top management isn't on board with that, it does make does make your marketing a little bit, and here's the other thing with Dawn, I don't know if this is important or not. I try to make our organization not feed into that, the disbelief, that false belief. So some of our advertisers will ask us, well, do you provide lead reports and things of that sort? My answer is yes, we can. If you request them, we can give them to you. And then that also gives me the opportunity to say, but remember, this is only the kind of the tip of the spear. Yeah, exactly. It's just but we can do it. So we do not set up automated systems where we'll automatically send out leads to or number of click reports or open reports and things of that sort. Why? Because I don't want to feed into this erroneous belief that numbers matter. Right. Not saying that numbers aren't important. Don't get me wrong. You do have to have numbers. You do have to have sales and things of that sort. But a large portion of what we're doing in marketing is not measurable by numbers.
Right. So I've had this argument too. As you know, we do a lot of email blasts here. So clients are always asking me, Donna, where's the tracking report? So we give them the tracking report. And one of the things I've been able to not fall back on, but also reinforce with them is, yes, these were our opens, these were our clicks. But since we were blasting to this audience of subscribers or conference attendees that are in your specific niche area, you have to realize that even the people who just saw your subject line or your company name, you got some value out of it.
That's right. Yeah. And how are you going to measure that?
You can't because those people may see the message. Maybe they don't open it. And I'm guilty of this. On my busy days, I might see something from an organization that, feeds me information, and I'll go back and maybe read it later, or maybe I missed that email, but I'll get the next one.
Right.
And it's because they offer me value in my day-to-day work.
Right.
Yeah. So you have to make sure that your marketing, yes, the clicks and opens is only the tip of the iceberg. But in order for the other part to reinforce all your marketing is you have to make sure you're going after the right audience and maybe your specific niche audience versus, people who years ago would blast out to every company of a certain size, hoping to get a good return.
Right.
Those days are done. And I totally agree. That's a waste of money.
Right. Right.
When I'm sitting down with that big whiteboard. But if we're going nice and specific towards your target audience, you're getting value.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And it is all an issue of developing that audience and knowing your audience, asking the right questions. Who is my audience? And
Yes. Well, we better not go into that. We go into that topic. We could be here all month. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, the other thing is also figuring out, like we said before, we can't be good at everything. What channels your audience consumes.
Right.
And I know we run into that, because people go out into social, do this, do that. And, someone asked me yesterday, are you on TikTok? And I'm like, no, we're not on TikTok.
No, not on TikTok. Yeah. And again, this is going to be, I assume it's going to be very market specific, right? Depending on what channels. But you've got to ask that question because you were talking about your company started 40 years ago and 41 years ago. Yeah. I remember when I first started in the publishing business, we basically had three products, let's say, and really it was only one. We had a magazine. That was basically it. Then we added a website, but before websites came along, there was basically a magazine, and within the magazine there was only.
We're not that old.
Oh yes. But before the internet. Yeah, before the interweb, All right. We had basically only one product, and you could either sell display advertising, you'd sell classify advertising, or you could sell literature showcase, right? I mean, life was simple back then, right? So the question that we're addressing here of what channels to use was really almost a non-question, almost. The question was really, okay, well, do you want a classified ad or do you want a display ad? Or do you want a literature showcase? Those are simple questions, but it was all going out in the magazine.
And that would be all based on size.
Yeah,
right.
Based on the size, based on their budget, things of that sort.
Yeah.
So that was the only question. Now, we're still doing the same thing. We're still transferring information from one party to another. We're still getting people comfortable with other, with companies. But the means by which we can do that, the different channels that we can use are just, there's a plethora of them, right? There's a lot of it, and it is a little bit more difficult to discern, which goes back a little bit, Donna, that question we were asking before about ROI, right? So the question of, well, is it easier to do an ROI on an e-blast versus a print ad? Well, in a sense, I can at least give you a number. I don't know if it's ROI, but I can at least give you a number, which makes some people very happy. They love numbers. As long as they've got numbers, they're living the life, right?
Yes.
At least I can give them a number if we do an e-blast. Well, I can tell you how many was delivered to. It comes right off of my very official website. How many it went to, how many it was delivered to, how many people opened it, how many people clicked on it, how many times they opened it, all that good stuff. At least I can give numbers. When I send out a print magazine, can I do that?
No.
No, I cannot tell you how many I mailed it to.
Yeah.
No clue what goes on after that.
Yeah.
So therefore, those people who have a propensity to love numbers and want some sort of proof that they can pass up the thing, where are they going to gravitate? Well, I want to do digital products because I can get numbers with those,
Right.
Fine. Okay, that's fine. But are you really accomplishing what you want to accomplish?
Right.
So the channel question is an important one, and it does tie in. All goes back to that whole ROI story. People tend to choose those channels where they can get ROI. I think it's short-sighted. I think they have to be very careful about that.
Oh, it goes back to also, you find a publication that is spot on to your target audience.
Yeah.
You place a print ad, it could end up being more valuable than an email. But like you said, you can't put numbers to it.
Right.
I'm working with a company right now, and we did an email blast, which is great. And then the print ad is such a great way to reinforce your email message. And they did 3 ads throughout the magazine. So they separated out. So if someone was at the beginning of the magazine, middle, or the end, because sometimes people skip around, but a magazine that's a quality magazine for your specific industry isn't a magazine people just like and throw out.
Right.
Most times they read the articles or they keep it on their desk for a while. So to me, yes, you don't get those numbers on it, but your print ad could have a lot of legs, because it could be, so-and-so, Tom reads it, but then he says, hey, Joe, did you see this article on here? And passes the magazine around.
Right.
And it's just a great way to give your company and your brand a nice 360-degree view. Right. And this goes back to building trust again. We can all send emails, and that's the other thing companies should realize. You could send emails right now very inexpensively if you got some garbage list and sent it out.
Right.
But, to place a print ad or to do a postal campaign, that takes more resources. You really have to plan that out.
Yeah.
And that's when it gives you more validity as a brand and builds that trust. And then building the trust brings you those long-term customers.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
Two points I wanted to make on this whole the choosing the channel as far as print. And it sounds like I'm just harping on print and wanting to, go print. It's only reason that's the case is because so much today we're facing the opposite argument of, well, I don't want to do print, right? So I'm not married to print. We've got all the different products. Most publishers do, most people do. But we need to address the issue at hand, and that is the people saying, "Well, I don't want to do print because that's old school," right? So two important points to remember. Our research, we've got this little research division of our business called Heat Treat Research, And we do studies. Almost every study we do, we ask the question, how would you like your information delivered? Very consistently, the answer comes back that 30 to 40% of the people prefer to receive their information in only print. Only print. Okay. Wow. 30 to 40%. Now, some people say, well, I'll get to that point later. So anyhow, my point is this. If you're, and it could be different depending on your market. Mine's an industrial market.
Yeah.
There's young people in it. There's older people in it. Tends to be a little bit older market. But the point is 30 to 40%. If you as a company in a market like that decide to do just digital because it's what you can get numbers on, guess what? You've lost 30 to 40% of your audience.
Yeah.
So go ahead if you want to do that. If you want to be short-sighted, I can slap you upside the head. You're being short-sighted, and you can do that. And it's true, print is more expensive, but that's 30 to 40% of your market.
Sorry. No, you finish.
Well, I was just going to say the second point very briefly is that a lot of people say, well, that's because you're an older market. You've got you have older people in there and they're more print oriented. Fact of the matter is, most of our research shows that it's fairly consistent across the board, age-wise, whether somebody wants print or digital. A lot of our young people, you've got young kids. We've talked about our kids a bit in the past, right? You young kids, meaning 20s. Yes, we are that old, Donna. But anyhow, our kids say, listen, why most of them like to get something hard in their hand because why do I want to sit in front of my phone, my computer all day long? They say, you know what, I get sick of it. If I'm at work, I'm on the computer. If I'm, wherever, a lot of it's on the computer. Give me something novel, something interesting, a hard copy of something. So we tend to see that it's not true across the board. We tend to see 60-year-olds that are very tech savvy and want only digital stuff. We also see young people in their 20s who will, they'll use digital, but give me a hard copy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, years ago, it used to be when email first came about, people said, oh, this is great because the mailboxes were getting so full. So everybody, like you said, went to email and digital. Yeah. And now, guess what, people? Those mailboxes are nice and empty. So when you do get a magazine, it does get more eyes and it gets more attention than it ever did before. And during COVID, I heard from a lot of people, it's like their biggest outing, because everyone was at home, was to walk to the mailbox.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
They all got excited about what was in the mail. And I agree with you. I've heard it now across all different age ranges that they do like physical mail.
Yeah. Yeah.
Especially for me, if it's an industry specific. So some of my marketing publications that I receive, or really I receive magazines, Fabricated Metal or Metal Center News. Yeah. I get them all in the mail just because I like to look through them, because when I look through a physical piece, I get a better idea of what the content's about. Who are they writing it to? Or I've learned something about an industry that I might want to say, okay, if you're marketing to, the fabricated metal space, you should try to do this, this, and this. Yeah. And so there's just things that you pick up sometimes from a physical magazine that you wouldn't normally get.
So this may be a topic for another discussion. So feel free to cut me off, and no problem. I was visiting a customer the other day, and my eyes got wide open because I walked in. It was one of our potential advertisers, and magazine was on the table. He says, "Yeah, I want to talk to you about that." So we had a nice visit. As I was leaving, he said to me, he said, "By the way, do you mind taking me off of your print distribution, because we're trying to get ISO something certified. I forget the number, but it's an environmental certification." And their corporate policy was to minimize the amount of paper coming into their offices. And that's why he doesn't want print. And my eyes just went, you know what? Now that kind of stinks. Yes. Because here's some sort of an environmental certification board telling these people in what way they can receive information.
Right. Right.
So I guess maybe in the topic for another day, but it was just an eye opener, Donna. I thought,
wow, that is an interesting topic, and that is something for another day. But I think it should come down to is if the publication actually brings them value in the job that they're doing.
Right. Right.
The person should be able to get in the information any way they want. And
Yeah.
I'm a big environmental person,
Yeah,
I
same,
tried
same.
my best, but there's certain things I do have to get in print because I use it for work.
Yeah. But imagine if you were a company and you could not get this ISO certification because
of that.
Because this one magazine is being mailed in, they'll give you a, what do they call that? They give you a, it's not a variance, but it's something where, they cite you for
a penalty.
Because
fine
you did not comply with this one thing of getting. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that's another whole hurdle.
We better
get going here. I don't want to keep you all day.
Yeah.
The last thing is about rushing to get promotions out and not setting up a strategy. And so, like you said, if people try to deal with all the channels at once, they're, slapping up social posts, they're trying to do emails, but they don't have a strategy that helps build.
Right.
I know that's where we come into play, because I'll tell people, okay, let's start from scratch. Let's do this, but make sure these social posts complement the email you're doing. And then maybe the postal campaign goes only to the people who opened your email. And that way you're doing a strategy where you're building that, reinforcing the brand and building the trust, like you mentioned earlier.
Yeah. Yeah. It is definitely easier to just do than it is to stop and think, okay, what do we need to do and why are we doing it?
Yeah.
So developing that strategy, I'm not saying I'm perfect at it. We're not, certainly not. Sometimes we're, just busy. We need to get something out there, but typically you do want to ask those questions. You want to, as they say, plan the work and then work the plan, right? As opposed to just start working.
Yeah.
So
it's like what you said in the beginning with your company, have a vision, and then within the vision, I'm sure you've set it out. So you have goals and then tasks that different people handle, but everyone is going towards that same vision.
Right.
And just like the marketing, you should have what your main objective is, and then figure out how you're going to accomplish that and get it done. And what that helps businesses is not only do you get a strategy, but as a business owner, I think it helps you relax a bit. Because instead of having in your head all those, like as a squirrel, having all those nuts all over the place, you now have this nice little line of your nuts, and so then you can start ticking them off and figuring them out.
Right. We need to, as business owners, we need to be more introverted in our approach to execution than extroverts. So if I'm sure many of your listeners know the differences, but one of the differences, I'm very much an extrovert, right? I tend to start talking and then think about what I'm going to say, right? Which has been happening this whole time, Donna. We've been talking. Okay. So it's basically start talking, because to me, it starts making sense as I start saying it. Whereas with most introverts, it's okay, let me think about this for a minute. Let me think about how this works. Let me develop the plan, and then let me start talking. I think that's kind of what the point you're making, and it's an excellent point, is that when you're doing a marketing plan, try to be a little more introverted. Think about it first. Right. Ask the right questions, develop the plan, and then start talking. All right. As opposed to doing the extroverted where you start talking.
Like you said before, as an entrepreneur, I think our brains are always like, and we're going to be like, because I'm definitely extroverted, but my husband is not, he's definitely taking in the whole picture, and he figures it out before we go forward, where I'm like, okay, no, but you're right. That's where I've gotten in trouble over the years with, okay, let's rein it back in and figure out where we're trying to go with this. Yeah,
really. And thank God for introverts, the people that do, or they give us the guardrails,
they pull us back in, they corral us up.
Yeah. Thank God for those people, because really we would be off doing a lot of crazy things that really would not be to our benefit. So there is good. My wife's, like you said, your husband's introverted. My wife's introverted, and it's good. Yeah. But to your point about planning, all right, which is your point here. Yeah. It is important take time to do it. I mean, Covey talks about sharpening the saw,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
I've got on Fridays of every week at noon for about an hour. I actually have time set aside on my calendar that I've scheduled aside that says plan for next week.
Yeah.
So, now do I do it? Not very often, but hey, at least it's there on my schedule.
Hey,
So-
well, at least you're doing, and like you said, the Coveys, I did the 4DX. I read that book recently, and they're talking
Yeah.
about setting out the strategy, but then the executing, which
Yeah.
we won't go into that now because that's another whole discussion in itself. But I think this should have given business owners a lot of good tips. Hopefully it'll save them time and money,
Right.
getting themselves faster to that nice uphill sales increase versus that roller coaster kind of sales. So
Yeah.
I want to thank you very much for your time today.
Always a pleasure, Donna. You're nice to talk to.
Yes, I will talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to the World Innovators Podcast. For more information about today's topic, email us at dpeterson@worldinnovators.com or call 860-210-8088. And please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a future episode.